Hello again, everyone. I am back real soon, and for good reason. In today's video, I'm going to be correcting some information from my previous video, and then I'll be giving you a comprehensive guide to Clorinde's team building. So, first of all, to address the new information. There's not a lot I got wrong, but the implications for it are huge. First of all, how her skill works. I believed it to be an extra multiplier value added to her normal attacks, but this is not the case. 66.1% of her attack is a very low multiplier, and thus I did not believe that it was the full normal attack scaling, but looking at the footage that got released, it is a little fast. Next up, her own healing will not be converted to Bond of Life, it will instead just heal her. Teammate healing will still be converted though. And finally, how her Ascension 1 works. I was gaslit into believing you needed 3 different reactions. Wrong. It just needs to be 3 electro reactions of any type. It's not like Nouvellette, you can proc the same electro reaction 3 times to get max stacks. Something we also found out is that the amount of damage this can give has a cap. And to simplify it for you all, the cap is 30,000 attack. That simple. These new discoveries change Clorinde's team building a lot, and to do her justice, I have to go into detail how every sort of buff is going to affect her and then what teams are going to be her best. If you were looking for a guide on how Clorinde's kit works, then I suggest you look at my previous video. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. She's Electro, so how is she in hyperbloom? To be 100% with you, it's kind of depressing. You could tell she was not designed for this. She attacks very fast, but that does not do her much good in hyperbloom, because she'll ultimately be limited by hyperbloom C generation. There's also the fact that Clorinde has absolutely no EM scaling within her kit. An attack sense is almost always the same because of how much she likes attack, and then hyperblooms and aggravates can't really save her if she's not building EM. So, she likes attack. Well, let's just put her with Bennett. Wrong! Her A1 is a cap, remember? 3,000 attack is a high number, but Bennett easily gets you over that. The first character with this guy gives you actual diminishing returns. Damn, that is crazy. Clorinde can't even take advantage of his healing because she's a Bond of Life character, so this completely disables half of what Bennett does in the first place, and he also locks you in a circle. All of this makes Bennett one of the biggest bait characters to put your Clorinde with. So, the Hyperbloom route doesn't work, and the Bennett route doesn't work. Let's just go with the Taser team then. She gets to take advantage of her need for attack since his team won't let her over the cap, and there's no need for EM either. So, how's this team? Well, not great either. The team does buff Clorinde a good amount, giving damage bonus from Farina and either Yolanda or Kozua, but that's it. Yeah, it's a lot of damage bonus, but she's getting plenty of it from her weapon, set, and goblet. This ultimately leads to Raiden Syndrome, where you go for an attack goblet as well. You just get overloaded on damage bonus, which does not really address Clorinde's biggest issue when it comes to her damage output, which is her low multipliers. Compare this to the aforementioned Raiden, who has high multipliers and also lowers the team's energy needs. Suddenly, Clorinde doesn't look too hot. So, what's next? Overload? Well, back to Bennett again. The traditional Chevreuse team with an Electro DPS would be to use Bennett, Chevreuse, and then Sorrow or Zhengling. We have already discussed why Bennett is not the greatest character to use with Clorinde, which, to remind you, is because her Ascension 1 has a cap. But what about just Chevreuse on her own? Chevreuse gives very strong buffs herself, and people often forget that most of what Chevreuse does is not locked to a full overload team. Her Ascension 1 requires the use of only Electro or Pyro characters, but luckily her Ascension 4 and C6 do not need this at all. This gives us 60% electro damage bonus as well as 40% attack. Very strong buffs. But you bet I'm gonna start complaining again. And you'd be right. You know, too much damage bonus. At a certain point, it just starts to get too much. And then there's her A4. It may not have team restriction, but you still require overload to proc it. This is going to be difficult, because Clorinde has no way to guarantee Electro Aura on the enemy without just entirely wasting your skill or burst. Chevreuse herself also does not have consistent Pyro application. which means you would have to use your Clorinde burst in order to get that overload proc. Want to know something you don't have to do, but you probably should? Subscribe! I'll be posting more Clorinde content as well as Siegeman videos and maybe even a little bit of Sethos. Anyway, proceeding! So, what's left at this point? Is it even possible to make a hyper carry Clorinde team? She just seems to have anti-synergy with every support you can think of. Well, let's look at every stat you can get from above. EM? She doesn't scale with it. Attack percent? She likes it, but you can't go too high. Damage percent? She has a lot of it already, and so at a certain point, it just goes too far. It seems like we've exhausted all of our options. Well, I'll accept one. Flat damage. Think about it. Flat damage scales with damage percent but not attack, so not being able to overstack attack won't hurt it. It also scales with crit, which she has a lot of. Flat damage is the key. The main ways for Clorinde to get flat damage are with Aggravate and Genjin. And it just so happens that those are the teams I think she has the most promise in. So let's start with the one I'll be using, but not the one I personally recommend. Genjin gives 30 stacks of flat damage for your normal attacks. The buff itself is not very strong, so why are we using it? Well, it can be triggered 30 damn times. Compare this to Shenhe, who gets 7 max. Genjin's strength is not in the buff itself, but how many damn times she can proc it. So she really likes multi-hit characters. Even characters like Ayato and Yoimiya, who do fast normal attacks, will not hit this 30 cap. But Clorinde? She is another level of fast and is in multi-hit heaven. Even in the least generous assumptions, she'll hit at least 30 normal attacks. Combined with Yunjin C6, as well as giving attack speed to your team, that makes Yunjin an incredible option at C6. Also, a reminder that Archaic Petra will give Clorinde electro damage bonus, and her C2 gives normal attack damage bonus. Yunjin is a very good contender as a Clorinde buffer. Now, onto the next archetype. Aggravate is less synergistic with Clorinde's kit overall, but I consider it to be the better team, because it's a lot less gimmicky. It's usually played with Nahida, but people tend to use Baiju instead for comfort. Clorinde does not need this, as she can easily sustain herself. Now, Aggravate scales with Clorinde's EM, but since she likes attack so much, why is this fine? Well, Nahida will buff Clorinde's EM, and there's always Dendro Resonance that gives 100 EM, so that's a lot of EM you don't need to worry about. This team can also take care of your attack needs if you just use TTDS on Nahida. Not the smoothest thing in the world, but it's good. So, why do I recommend this over the Yunjin teams? Well, the rotation is a lot smoother, as Yunjin needs some silly rotations if you decide to use Archaic Petra. It's also because of Fischl. Clorinde's personal damage is a lot lower in Aggravate, but it gets compensated by Fischl outputting a lot of damage in this team. As much as I dislike her, I have to admit she's good here. I used to believe that Aggravate was just not a good team, and I still believe this for the current variants with Yae and Keqing. But Clorinde will be the first actually good Aggravate DPS, instead of having an equal share of damage like Fischl and Yae, or just Keqing doing less damage than Fischl altogether. Clorinde has a higher contribution to the team, as well as aggravating a lot faster than both of the others, which gives you more Fischl A4 procs. This overall leads to one of Clorinde's best teams, even if the synergy is not perfect. So, how are you going to use your Clorinde? I want to try out some gimmicks with Aggravate and Junjin combined, but I'm curious if you guys have any ideas yourself. That's all from me. Peace.